round ball rock theme?
Yes, it is the round ball
Where they're
rock one.
playing it. It's like, no, basketball, basketball. Give me the basketball.
That's exactly the one that comes up. The next one is
Okay.
some interview with Tom Segura talking about
All right. Yeah, that
basketball.
sounds about right.
Also, while you were talking there, I turned us on because I thought it'd be a fun conversation to hear over.
All right. Well, in that case, we're already live. You are a lucky viewer. You got a little peek behind the curtain into the sort of things Dave and I talk about off camera. And I mean, I would argue you're better for it. But in the event that you're not, I'm sorry. Hopefully, something that we say over the next hour plus will bring us back to at least even on the night. And with that note, welcome to the Tom and Dave Show. I'm Tom. That's Dave. It's May 5th. We've been on a slight sabbatical. We are back. We are better than ever. We had some load management. Dave is almost ready to graduate college. You presented your capstone.
Very close. Yes, capstone's done, and I just have a class over the summer.
May I ask, what is the class over the summer?
It's called Research Methods, which you would think I would take before I did my capstone, wouldn't you?
Nope. I took that my sophomore year. I did not enjoy it.
Yeah.
I only asked because my last class of college was last fall while I was working at the athletic department. I took Latin American film fully online. Now, I did not know that it was going to be fully online when I signed up for it. And then when the professor sent out a syllabus, there was no meeting date listed at all. Like, just, there was no, like, yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're going to meet at 10. No, nothing. It was just like, no, you're going to watch the movie, post on a discussion board. That's it.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was awesome until I remembered what, like, the part-time tuition was for it. And I was like, this kind of sucks. But
that's true.
Ultimately,
but
it was the last class of college. I was able to graduate.
Did you have a moment where you ended college as you were sitting in your room just on your computer?
Not even.
Oh.
Because, like, because I graduated. So Northeastern does the co-op program where you basically do an internship for 6 months for those of our viewers that are not familiar, which hopefully is a lot of you, because that would mean that people are watching this that aren't just our friends and families. But yeah, so Northeastern does the co-op program. You work for 6 months. So, like, I handed in my final paper on, like, December 6th, and then didn't realize it wasn't due until, like, the 15th. So I handed in, like, a week early on accident, which was fine. All good. I had to watch Roma. Did a lovely little write-up there.
Oh, nice.
And then, like, my work was also, like, 90% remote for the entirety of it. So yeah, like, there was just one final day where it was like, hey, we have a video project for you. And then at 5:00 it was like, cool. Yeah. And that was the end of my college career. I woke up on Saturday and it was like, I guess I'm done now.
Has that sunk in yet? I feel like at this point maybe, but
yeah, no, it's definitely, like, it's a thing that, like, in the immediate aftermath of it, I was like, wow, that kind of sucked. Like, it's just no sort of closure at all. Like, it's weird to be leaving Boston like this, weird to be just kind of shutting the book on college like this. But then, you know, I moved on. I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, we go on to the next thing and just kind of hope that goes well. And here I am now doing part of my next thing, which is this lovely show with you. And tonight's edition of the lovely show with you, I think I nailed that segue.
That was great.
Thank you. The lovely show that we're doing this evening, we're going to be talking about the play-in tournament and the fact that LeBron James is mad about it. We're going to be talking about people being mad on behalf of LeBron James about it, even though LeBron James is already mad at it. We're going to talk about how we feel about it, which, if you're tuning into this show, should interest you, because there are so many basketball shows out there, and you chose ours. And then we're going to talk about some awards. We're going to talk about what's going into the decision making on people that are what's presumably going into the decision making of the people that are voting for them, who we think is going to wind up winning them, why they might win them, why they might lose them, and that could probably take us to cut time. But before that, Dave, we have something of a tradition here at Tom and Dave. It's
Mm,
Wednesday night. It's after 5 o'clock.
mm.
It's time for beers on the stream.
I've got mine. I've already been taking sips of mine. I just have
What do you got? What do
I
you
just
got in the
have
Stein?
I just have a regular Yingling traditional lager, just the regular beer. I've got a 6 pack this weekend because my roommate had one in the fridge and I had it and I forgot how delicious they were, and now I've bought in a couple since then.
I love Yinglings. I know that they're very pigeonholed. Like they're the most New Jersey slash like Northeast Pennsylvania of the beers. And anyone that has heard me talk about Wawa knows how I usually feel about like very New Jersey brands.
Mm-hmm.
But Yingling is the exception. I really enjoy them. I am having an ice cold can of Narragansett lager. It's based in Rhode Island, I believe. It's the official beer of the Clam, as you can see on the can right here, which is a title I did not know it had until like a couple weeks ago when I bought these. And I'm going to crack it live on the stream. All right, let's get this show started. So,
That was a good crack.
thank you. I thought it was very, very crisp, very close to the microphone.
So, I think we should start with the Eastern Conference play-in stuff, just because that is the tightest situation we have going on here.
Yes.
Tom, you'd be like happy to know that when I was getting up a bunch of basketball reference pages to see how many games everyone had left, who they were playing against, I just didn't open up the Knicks page. I was like, we don't need to
Wow.
I don't need to see how many games they have left because I feel pretty good about them. So
That's music to my ears.
I was hoping. So
Can I tell you then?
oh yeah, you can tell them.
The thing I'm worried about,
Yeah.
the worry I have with the Knicks is just that like they don't have that many games left, but there's a possibility that they only get like 1 or 2 more wins this year.
Hmm.
It's an outside possibility, but like their remaining schedule is Nuggets, Suns, Clippers, Lakers, Spurs, Hornets, Celtics,
Ooh. Oh, I didn't know
which
that.
is just terrifying to me. It's they're finishing on a West Coast road trip. Luckily they picked up a few wins back to back against the Bulls, the Rockets, and then the Grizzlies, which were like games that they sneaky needed because otherwise this stretch could kill them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I'm a little bit worried about the Knicks just because they do have that gauntlet of a schedule left. It wouldn't shock me if Celtics Knicks on the last night of the season winds up being for a play-in spot versus non-play-in spot. And I wouldn't feel awful about that because like the Celtics are capable of just laying an egg this year
Yeah.
in a way that I don't think many other teams are. Sorry to cut you off there, though.
No. That's good that you brought up the Knicks. I thought I didn't have to bring them up because I felt pretty confident about them, but I didn't realize their schedule was that tough. You'll probably play an injured Lakers team, maybe, or a team that's still figuring it out. But
Yeah,
that
I'm hoping they play a Lakers team that's clear of the play-in by that point.
yeah. But yeah, the Nuggets Suns stretch. Nuggets Suns Clippers stretch is a tough one. The Heat had to do that one earlier this year. I feel like that's just like the common West Coast trip right now.
Yeah, it makes.
So the Knicks have 7 games left. Correct? Yes, the Knicks have 7 games left.
Yep.
The Hawks have 6 games left. They are in 5th place, just a game and a half behind the Knicks right now. Their remaining games on the season: Phoenix, Indiana, Washington, Orlando, and Houston. So a double Washington, Orlando, and a Houston. That's looking pretty good for Atlanta.
Yeah.
However,
I think Washington should take at least one of the two, though.
Yeah, and Washington's also in their own situation of trying to get into that last spot of the play-in anyway. So that's not as easy as it probably looks. And the Pacers are probably trying to maybe get into that 8th spot. But there's definitely a scenario here where Atlanta's able to overtake the Knicks just because of scheduling here, and Atlanta getting
Yeah,
a game to end the season against Orlando and Houston. I don't know who holds the tiebreaker between those two teams, but
the Knicks do.
okay, that's
Yeah,
good. Um, Tom, you
no,
can
but I
talk. You can talk
it's
for a second about the Knicks if you want to, about their streak. You haven't been able to. We haven't streamed since they've been
yes.
on this win streak. So how are you feeling right now?
So I believe 2 weeks ago on Tom and Dave, the Knicks had won 7 straight, and we had to push and postpone the show. And I mentioned to Dave that this was probably part of a conspiracy to keep a very energized version of myself off the internet and prevent me from talking about the Knicks in an irresponsible and, frankly, a little bit too true for the internet way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it half worked because the Knicks winning streak ended. But because this is a Tibbs team, and they fight and they claw back into everything, they have now won 3 in a row after the streak ended. The streak ended at 9 games. They lost to the Suns. Chris Paul just went full point guard in the fourth. They had a couple of huge shots on them, which were really demoralizing. And yeah, no, now they've won 3 straight. They beat the Bulls. They beat the Rockets. They beat the Grizzlies. They're looking really good. They haven't had Mitchell Robinson for a few weeks now, but they've kind of adjusted seamlessly because Nerlens Noel is actually awesome. And the only real drop off I've seen from Mitchell Robinson to him is on the offensive end,
Mm-hmm.
just because I think Mitch has a little bit better, like, I don't want to say touch, but just like better feel around the rim for like where he needs to get when he's catching the ball. Um, but yeah, no, the Knicks have been playing fantastic lately. Um, I think
I just want to
it's
say
so
sorry,
hard to not.
Tom. I don't mean to interrupt. But I just want to get some. We are getting some feedback from the chat. My dad is chiming in. He said, "I used to like Tom. How can anyone not like Wawa? Great sandwiches, good gas, clean restrooms, best lemonade ever, and no fee ATMs." So we
He
can
makes a compelling point. It's the toughest part.
um, just wanted to bring that up. We can come back to that later, but can people in the chat can maybe talk to my dad about
This is
that.
also just part of like a larger. Wawa is also. I don't think this makes it much better, but Wawa is just part of like a larger belief that I have that like none of the localized things that like In and Out, I also don't think is that special.
Mm. Oh wait, no,
Whataburger,
you've told me
I
about
don't
this
think it's that.
before. Yeah.
Yeah, like Whataburger, I don't think is that special. Shake Shack, don't think it's that special. Like whatever your local food thing is, I'm probably gonna be like a little bit annoying about it.
Hmm. No,
It's
I get it.
it's one of my worst character traits. I'm okay with that, but it is, yeah. Wawa is just like a symptom of a larger thing. Um,
Is there one by you, like some sort of localized food or convenience store thing by you that you've grown up next to that you feel this way about?
I don't necessarily think so. Like I think like Carvel doesn't exist outside the Northeast, but like I'm also not like people aren't really going for Carvel the way they come out and support like an In and Out, where it's like, oh yeah, you got like you don't get it, you got to be from here, you got to have had In and Out. Like it's you don't understand till you like Carvel's ice cream. You can get that most places. I feel like Shake Shack would probably be the closest thing, just because I think that started around New York,
Hmm.
and even that, like I'm kind of a I don't want to say a truther on, but like a little bit of a truther on, where I'm like, yeah, this what are we doing here? Like it's good.
A
Um,
truther is
I
in the
do think you
sense
wind
of
up paying
like
too much at Shake Shack.
a truther in the sense of being cynical
It's
about
not
it.
that good.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, yes. That's a really good way to put it. Like I'm just cynical about whatever local food chain people are happy with. Um,
Um,
yeah,
so
I think Waffle House is the one that's immune. This
Waffle House
Waffle
has
House
the
is the one where I'll be like, no, this is nothing.
Waffle House also feels like it
What's
has
up?
the biggest radius of any of the ones we've talked about.
Waffle House is also, and I think this is an important part of my respect for the chain. Waffle House is the only chain restaurant that's used by FEMA as like a disaster measurement system.
Really?
Have you heard of this?
No.
Yeah, so there's something called the Waffle House Index, which is basically like a disaster impact estimation system. I believe it's FEMA that uses it. And basically, the logic behind it is like, we think Waffle House will stay open through like just about anything. And like, as long as Waffle House is open, the world is not falling down. And we know it's time to really move if the Waffle House is closed. Like, if a Waffle House is closed, we need to get people on the ground. We need to figure out what's going on out there because something important has changed,
Hmm.
and
I,
that's the only reason that Waffle House closed.
I don't know that. I'll check that out later. That's good to know. Um,
Yeah, for the people at home, check out the Waffle House Index. Um, but in any event, the Knicks. Speaking of, localized institutions that probably aren't actually that special, the New York Knicks have been playing so well as of late.
mhm.
Um, they, I don't want to get too excited because I realize that there's a second round matchup. No matter how this shakes out, there's like a matchup in the first two rounds looming with either Philly, Brooklyn, or Milwaukee, and like the drop off after those three teams is steep. Even as much as I'm in on the Knicks, um, I think they could give Philly and I think they could give Philly a series more than the other two teams. I don't think they'd really be able to score with Milwaukee in the way that they are against some other teams.
Mhm.
Because like even Julius Randle, who I love, is like, all right, Milwaukee's just going to throw Giannis on him 1-on-1, and all of a sudden the ISO looks that he's able to get, and the ISO like the shots he's able to create off of that, they stop coming because Giannis is a really fantastic defender who's long enough to shut him down.
Mhm.
As we saw against Kevin Durant this week, like Giannis was the first person to block a Kevin Durant fadeaway ever. It was insane. But yeah, so that's my Knicks spiel. I'm really excited about them. I think they'll probably wind up. I think they wind up a 5 seed, even though the schedule makes me feel like they might be lower.
Well, they could still end up a 5 seed and have a rough end to the season. I mean, they have a nice game and a half cushion right now. Um, so I think even if they
That's
went
a good
like
point. Yeah.
2-4, or what would it be, 2-5, as long as none of these other teams really catch fire, I think they'll be okay. I mean, none of the teams have caught fire besides the Knicks recently. That's why they've been able to, build this cushion here.
Hang on to this 4 seed.
Um,
Yeah.
Atlanta
I
had
think
that nice
the
streak
Knicks.
about like a month ago, but has kind of leveled off
Yeah.
since then. The Heat are inconsistent. The Celtics are inconsistent. I mean, I think,
I honestly think the biggest thing that's helping the Knicks here is just like the floor for them is not as low as it is for a team like a Boston or an Atlanta, or even to an extent, and you could probably speak on this greater than I could, a Miami,
mhm,
where you have games where it's just like, no, we don't have it tonight.
mhm.
Like the Knicks, and I know that the like Tibbs team is kind of a meme at this point, but like for better or worse, the Knicks are not gonna just kind of turtle in a lot of these games.
Yeah,
Um,
I would agree with that.
which I think helps in stretches like this, where it's like, oh yeah, maybe we're able to steal one against like a Clippers team that's playing without Paul George, or
Mhm.
I don't know, a Lakers team where Anthony Davis is sitting tonight. Like it's wishful thinking, but yeah, I'm a fan. I'm gonna think wishfully. Um, but speaking of Atlanta and moreover Miami, what's the end of the Heat season looking like?
So the Heat end their season. They have 6 games left against Minnesota, a back to back against Boston, which is going to end up being really pivotal, I think. Um,
Oh yeah,
Philly, Milwaukee, and Detroit. So the Philly Milwaukee game's obviously tough. The Boston game's incredibly important. We at least have these should be gifts of games between Detroit and Minnesota, two teams that very badly don't want to win games at this point in the season. But who knows?
no, they do not.
The Heat have disappointed me many times this year by losing games to teams that they definitely shouldn't be losing to. So I don't really know what to
Including
make.
the Timberwolves.
Including the Timberwolves just like 2 weeks ago. So, um, yeah. Look, the Heat have been. I've been saying this to you in our chats recently. the Heat
Yep.
have been very inconsistent ever since they had that really nice like 8 game winning streak, and then ever since they had that, that was then followed by a 6 game losing streak. Um,
Eey.
then like a 50-50 game situation until the trade deadline. Then we made the moves and got Oladipo, we got Ariza, we got Bjelica, and we got Dwayne Dedman. Um, Oladipo played 4 games and got hurt. Ariza's been good. Bjelica doesn't really play. Dedman's been really good. Despite
Devin's been
that,
fantastic.
he's been
It's
awesome.
hilarious.
He had an 18-9 game the other night off the bench in like less than 20 minutes. It was amazing. um, but all this is to say that I just at this point I know there are some stats that our friend Giancarlo will sometimes post on Twitter about how like the Heat lineups that are good, like that play a lot and are the consistent lineups, are good lineups that have like
Yeah.
positive ratings. And our problem has just been consistency, health, these things. We haven't been able to like get this going for a stretch longer than like 2 weeks. But at the same time, I have a really tough time seeing this Heat team just click it together.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said this a month ago. I thought maybe we were onto something, like it eventually would click. But I've seen us lose too many games, like that game that we just mentioned to Minnesota, losing a game to Chicago a week ago, losing an incredibly important game to Atlanta by nearly 20 points a couple weeks ago.
That's a big one.
It's just there have been games where they need to show up really badly and aren't. And, you'll hear guys in the post game interviews. Bam said a couple weeks ago that or this actually might have been earlier and maybe it's just been posted a couple weeks ago. And this is like using the cliche back on themselves really. He said that, that Heat culture, that everything that we were talking about in the playoffs and the finals and everything, he hasn't really felt like it's been there this year. In terms of like every single game there being us showing up for something. So while I think we'll end this season probably on some 3-3, hopefully maybe 4-3 run, or no, 3-3 or 4-2, with hopefully, I'd assume we just lose both of the Philly and Milwaukee games. Actually, I think we'll probably just go 3-3 to end the season. And then we end 4 games above 500, probably solidly in that 6 or 7 spot, entirely dependent on who wins those games against the Celtics. Because if either of those teams sweep the other team, then that's it. That team is going to be 6 and the other team is going to be 7. So, yeah, it's weird. It seems like the season is really going to come down to that mini series. And it's going to determine whether we're in the play-in or whether we play Milwaukee. So, we'll see. But, yeah, at the right now, I'm not optimistic. I think you can tell by the tone of my voice.
Presumably, you want Milwaukee, right? Like, of how this could shake out, that's probably the one you'd be looking for.
Yeah, but at the same time, Milwaukee's been really impressive over the past couple weeks. Really the last month. So yeah, I'd rather Milwaukee because we've shown that we can beat them over Philly and Brooklyn, but it's still like a very minor like preference. It's like I don't know. I'm pretty down on them right now.
Well,
But
and as you said, like the Heat team that beat Milwaukee was a Heat team that had kind of switched it on
yes,
and reached a gear that it doesn't seem like they have this year.
yes, there have been. Again, our friend Giancarlo, I think, actually posted about this. There's been like 3 or 4 times this year where the Heat kind of turned it on and looked elite. It was the game where they beat the Jazz when they were like missed their like crazy run. That was big. They beat the Lakers. The Lakers they didn't have Davis, but they still did beat the Lakers in a pretty good game, like in March, I believe it was. And then way earlier in the season, we had a nice win against Milwaukee. But like, it's really just like
Yep.
those 3 games where we felt like we had the whole team, we came together, and we were able to beat a really good team. But right now, we can't even beat the bad teams or the teams that we have to beat for the playoff race.
Right.
So, who knows? Obviously, Oladipo is a giant X factor here. If he comes back, who knows?
Yeah. Do we know what the Victor Oladipo injury is at this point?
We
Because
have
like
it's
that's kind of one of
knee,
those where I haven't heard.
knee.
It's just knee like
Yes,
soreness or insert
it's been
adjective here.
yeah. It's pretty much just knee. And their Woj tweeted about like 3 weeks ago that the Heat expected Oladipo to come back before the end of the season, which is coming close. So
And
we'll see.
yeah,
In a post-game interview yesterday or a couple of days ago, Dragic mentioned something like when Victor gets back. So it seems to be like, I don't know.
when that's good.
Yeah. So I think the thing is the Heat are always super coy about serious injuries. But I also can't tell
Yeah.
whether they're just being super coy or like he will be back soon and they're just being very cautious. Who knows?
It's weird because that was one of those ones that like he pulled up after dunking in a game, and then I felt like just nothing came out, which is probably good because like usually when stuff comes out about injuries like that where it's non-contact and it's just like I landed weird, then the only things that come out are serious. So like that's probably a good sign.
Yeah. But I just hope it's not something
but
like
yeah, I think he
that report we got about Westbrook the other day. I don't know if you saw that, where he said like he's been playing the year on a torn quad or something, where he's just he's just playing through it.
you just plan on it,
Yeah, and just isn't going to get surgery in the off season. Like,
which a very Russell Westbrook thing to do.
yeah,
And we'll get to Russell Westbrook later in this play and talk. But I mean, for right now, as far as Oladipo goes, like, be a huge boost in like the 1 or 2 game play-in scenario, and then figure out what it looks like in a round 1 series. I feel like that helps them immensely on offense, which they would probably need.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know if you saw Milwaukee play Brooklyn last night, but there was like a 5-minute stretch in the fourth where Brooklyn just couldn't get anything off, like not a single shot.
Yeah. I didn't watch that game, but I watched some highlights this morning, and I mean that's why I'm scared about Milwaukee. Is I feel like they actually have kind of found this other level, and if they're able to match up well with Brooklyn, that'll definitely make it interesting for the second or third round whenever they would face each other.
Yes.
So ultimate Heat thing is I don't know. I think we'll end around where we are right now. I don't see a 6-game winning streak to end the season. And then the team that is most impacted by the Heat's end of the season, which is the Celtics, are currently in 7th, half game back of the Heat. They end their season playing Orlando, Chicago, the 2 Miami games. What's this next one here? It's not really letting me hover over it.
And they have Cleveland, Minnesota, and the Knicks.
Ooh, okay. I mean, so they have the Cleveland, Minnesota, and Orlando. That's pretty advantageous for them. Chicago, too. Chicago, I guess, is trying to fight for that play-in spot, but they've kind of fallen too far out of it at this point. So...
Yeah, Chicago's 4 out with 8 to play. I feel like they're cooked, but like still probably going to be trying. I think the Celtics have probably the easiest schedule we've talked about so far, just in terms of like they don't play anyone on the West Coast, they don't play any of the top teams in the East, and they have opportunity to beat the teams that are directly in front of them in a way that like the Knicks and the Hawks and the Heat don't as much. Like if I was picking a schedule to play, I would probably want this Celtics one out of the 4 that we've mentioned.
Yeah, because you have easy games, and then you have two games where you're like controlling your destiny type of thing, or
Yeah, exactly.
three games even with the Knicks game too, um, and that's really, I mean, not to go back to the Heat, but actually I can make this more in general. I think that's the situation you want to be in. You don't want to have other teams being controlling your situation. You don't want it to be a situation where it's the last game of the season and to go into sixth instead of seventh, you need to win and this team need to lose. That's
Yeah.
always like you that like you don't want that. So I
No, that's
think
stressful.
it's stressful and it also takes like the control out of your situation. Um,
The
so
funny thing though is I feel like for as much as Boston's schedule is great for them, they're also kind of the team of these four that's most capable of just putting up a stinker of a game.
mhm.
Like just a game where it's like, oh yeah, you know what, we lost to the Thunder tonight. Didn't need that, but we
like
it happened.
like they just
Like a week
recently
ago, they
did.
lost to the Thunder by four. Like it's they'll have these games where it's just like nothing's working tonight, and that would scare me as a Celtics fan, even because it's like, yeah, sure, we should beat like Minnesota or Cleveland, but you never know. Maybe then one second you look up and it's like Colin Sexton has 35 tonight. How'd this happen? Like that. I feel like that's the kind of thing that this Celtics team can just fall into.
Mhm, definitely. I mean, that almost happened the other night against San Antonio too, where the Celtics were
Yeah,
down. I believe it was 32 at some point in the second quarter. Ended up coming back and winning the
yeah,
game in overtime. Jason Tatum had 60 points. I was honestly, as much as we rail on the Celtics a lot, like I was actually pretty happy to see that. I think they needed a win like that. A team that's been
yeah,
this inconsistent and this disappointing down the stretch too. I mean, over their last um, like 7 or 8 games, they've lost 5 of their last 8 games in like the most important time of the
yeah.
year. Um, Losing that one would have been really painful, but actually getting a big win like that could theoretically be a nice little momentum boost. Although they did just lose to Portland the other day by 10, so who knows?
They
Um,
feel a little bit like Clippers Easty in that like they have a tremendous amount of talent and like on paper probably should be at the top of the conference, but then like at no point this season has everyone been healthy. Like it
yeah,
was first you had Kemba out with I think what was it, the knee, then he comes in. Tatum had the COVID and then had a tough time getting back from that. I mean, he said recently he still takes an inhaler before games. Then you had Marcus Smarko down with the hand
hmm
or hand wrist. Um, and like they're just now starting to get those minutes where it's like, yeah, everyone's back and they're going to be back for a few games in a row, and we can actually start playing everyone together. They've had to like, I think they picked the right time to sort of buy in on Robert Williams. Sorry, I confused him with the actor. But yeah, they picked the right time to buy in on Rob Williams. But that's still like a player you have to sort of work into your starting lineup.
hmm
Like that's not the easiest thing to do.
definitely.
Um,
Um, I still think
and like
though
they're
there,
2 months because of that.
yeah. At the same time, as much as like they definitely have the talent at the top three, you know, it's still the same issue as last year of like we don't really know who those next like 4 or 5 guys are for the Celtics. And I mean, if you look
Yeah.
at their most recent game against Portland, do you want to guess? So they started Tristan Thompson. They didn't start Rob Williams. So do you want to guess who
Okay.
the four
Okay.
guys or the three other guys played the most off the
So I'm
bench?
gonna guess that Robert Williams is not eligible for this.
Robert Williams is not eligible.
Okay. So they played the starting five
hmm
of Kemba, Smart, Tatum, Jalen, and then Tristan. They had the Robert Williams minutes. I'm gonna guess that it
So
was Peyton Pritchard.
I think Kemba's hurt again because they were playing
Okay.
Fournier instead of Fournier's in the
Oh,
starting five here.
okay. Okay. So Peyton Pritchard,
hmm
Aaron Nesmith,
Yes.
and one more player.
Yeah, one more.
What was it? Was it Romeo?
It was Romeo. Oh wow, good job.
Wow. Wow. I don't think I've ever gotten one of those like 3 for 3. I'm happy about this. Um,
um,
yeah, no, but it's like it's the same problem they had as last year, except like we've just taken Gordon Hayward out of the mix. Um,
yeah. You take
and
out
yet I feel
Hayward
like
and you. Mhm.
in a play-in scenario though, it's like yeah, we still might have the two best players on the floor no matter who we're playing. Like
Yeah.
unless it's Washington, in which case you could make the case for Beal and or Westbrook. But it's like if it's Boston Charlotte, they're fine. If it's Boston Indiana, they'll have the two best players on the court.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, so yeah, then we move on to Charlotte, who is currently in eighth, 2 games back of Boston, a team that has understandably took a big dip with the Hayward injury and the LaMelo injury. They have lost. I can't really do this math in my head here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of their last 15. So
Yeah.
rough goings recently. Their end of the season, they have 7 games left. They have Chicago and then Orlando,
Mhm.
New Orleans, Denver, Clippers, Knicks, Washington. Um, Feels like a big mix of talent there. You have a nice you get the games against Orlando, which I guess will be helpful. But then you're playing
Yeah.
a Knicks team that's going to still be fighting for seeding, a Washington
Oh yeah.
team that's going to be fighting for the play-in, Clippers who are probably fighting for. Are they still in the 2 seed hunt?
I think no. I think the
No, they've pretty
that
much fallen
Suns
out of it.
Jazz duo is kind of opening up some space.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Clippers are gonna need to stave off the Nuggets too, because
Yes.
the Nuggets are only half a game back of them. And although at the same time, maybe the Clippers want to finish fourth because then they don't play the Lakers in the
Mhm.
first round. Like, this is the Lakers being sixth has made this all so weird
Yeah.
because like essentially LA and Denver have to look at each other like, do you want to play Luca or do you want to play LeBron? Because we don't want to play either of them, but who are we more scared
Yeah.
of? But Charlotte, they've got that mini West Coast trip. Um, it's that Pelicans game is a big question mark to me. Just like I know the Pelicans aren't that good, but at the same time, that feels like one of those late season, like, oh wow, the Pelicans stole one.
Mm.
Okay, yeah, sure. Zion
Yeah.
had like 38 on 19 shots.
And not that any team has a guy that can guard Zion, but I feel like Charlotte especially has not a single person that could guard, like even guard him for a little bit. Um,
No, like, they don't have like a we can talk ourselves into putting him on Zion player.
yeah, not at all. So I don't know. Charlotte's been a weird team this year. They've gotten super hot at random times. They have gone super cold
Yeah.
post All-Star break because of their injuries. They are kind of ending up in a position of, I mean, pretty much how we predicted them. I don't want to say that we were like right on with this prediction or anything, but we were both like, I think, saying like, oh, Charlotte's probably just going to be like a play-in team at the absolute best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where they are. They could still make a run. They could still catch up to Boston, but they're 2 games back. That's a little bit of a gap at this point. 2 games is huge when there's only 6 games left. And
Yeah.
yeah. I don't have a ton to
Well,
say on Charlotte.
yeah, like it's the kind of gap that Boston would need to be like abnormally bad for Charlotte to catch. And for reasons that we just talked about, that doesn't feel as likely. It's funny to talk about Charlotte too because it's not too long ago that they were the 4 seed in the East,
Mm-hmm.
and then life came at them very quickly. I feel like they feel what 8 seedy to me. Yeah, I feel like they're the most likely to stay exactly where they are right now.
So
Where it's just like, yeah, no, like
yeah,
I actually didn't have much to follow that up with.
no,
Did
that's
you?
fine. So I mean, we could think about that right now. The way the play-in tournament would work right now is Boston and Charlotte would play,
Yeah.
and then Indiana and Washington would play. and then the loser of
Yes.
Boston and Charlotte plays the winner of Indiana Washington. Um,
Yes.
so, how do you feel about? I feel pretty bad about a Celtics Hornets matchup right now, but let me see how they played against each other this year. Um,
I
they're Boston
I
won
feel like
two
the
out of the
most like
Boston won 2 out of the 3 games this year.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the most likely outcome of those four is Boston and Washington, just because Washington's playing out of their mind right now,
Mm-hmm.
and like a play-in for like a play-in feels like exactly the game that Russell Westbrook is going to just be like, no, I'll put up 20, 20, and 20 right now. Why would I not do that? Like, I'm going to try 1,000% harder than everybody on the court because this is the kind of like weirdly meaningful game that I'm going to show out in. Um, and I love Russell for that. But yeah, like I do think Washington's the most dangerous team of that bottom three
Me too.
to get the 8 seed.
Not to get too much into intangible stuff that we don't know about, but it's definitely concerning hearing the stuff coming out of Indiana right now. How there seems to be
Yeah.
a lot of misalignments between new coach Nate Bjorken and the players and the front office. I think it was I think Bobby Marks had a good tweet about this. That was something like your like the one job you will always like the one failing you will always be fired for as a coach is if you lose the players. And it
Yeah.
sounds like from what we're hearing out of Indiana that that's happened. Obviously, we're not there. We don't know. That's what the reports are saying, though. And an incredibly motivated Washington team that's playing out of its mind with arguably the two. Well, I don't know. I think it's kind of. I think Beal is better than Sabonis. Where Sabonis and
Yeah.
Westbrook go, I think I could see someone having a debate about. However,
I think the thing with Sabonis and Westbrook is a very like on a given night it could be either way kind of thing.
mhm,
Because it's like who's Sabonis drawing in a playing game? Like Davis Bertans? He might be able to play bully ball there.
yeah. So with that in mind, I agree with you. I think Washington. I would easily pick Washington over the Pacers right now in that playing game. Um, and then they could probably beat the Hornets too.
Yeah.
So
Like it just I don't know. It feels like everything's clicking for Washington right now. And their stretch coming down is Bucks, Raptors, Pacers, Hawks, Cavs, Hornets. My biggest hope is that Washington plays spoiler for Atlanta and takes
that's
2 of those games.
that's what I was just gonna say for the Heat too. Like we really both of us need the Washington to play well there.
It's funny because there was a point in this season where I feel like I forget who it was. Someone mentioned to you like, what happens to Tom and Dave if the Knicks play the Heat in a play-in game?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point where both of us were like, yeah, our team will be a play-in team. And now we've wound up in this beautiful synergy of being like, no, actually, we want the same teams to win.
Yes.
We want the Wizards to win. We want the Hawks to lose. We're rooting for Cleveland now, which I didn't think we were going to be doing.
We also, I mean,
And yeah,
look, I think the Heat will stay at 6, but let's say if the Heat win those 2 against Boston and the Wizards win those 2 against Atlanta, we could be looking at a 4-5 Heat Knicks matchup, which would
a
be
nightmare for this show.
Yeah. No, it would be fun.
Just
It
a
would
nightmare.
be good posting, good Twitter posting for 2 weeks.
It would never be more apparent who wrote what tweet from the Tom and Dave account. That would be the funniest part for me.
Yeah, so I think that kind of wraps up the East play-in situation. I think we both, at the moment, agree that Washington and Boston would probably be the likely winners of the play-in tournament and end up in those 7-8 spots. And then if that happens, I can't really imagine either of them giving Philly or Brooklyn much of a battle. But, we'll see. I mean, I think we might get some discourse or not might, we will definitely get some discourse about the play-in tournament if
Oh, absolutely.
at the end
If
of the
Boston loses out,
yeah, if at the end of the first round both teams that ended up getting into the play-in as like the eighth seed or something, like just get swept.
yeah. At the
Well,
same, like, it's so funny because I feel like any play-in tournament discourse is gonna make like is gonna make so much more of a 1-8 playoff series than usually is.
mhm.
Like I think the Magic took what 2 games off Milwaukee last year, and that was kind of an anomaly.
I think it was just one, but it was the first game. It was game one.
Yeah, yeah. Like I feel like we always, or in the conversations I've had about this, it's always like, oh well, those first round playoff series are going to be unwatchable because the players are going to be all like gassed from the play-in tournament, and I kind of wonder what it is we're really like hoping to preserve here with a first round game against like the team that was the best in the East or the West in the regular season,
Mhm.
and the team that was like, hey, we're just happy to be here. Like I don't know how much of a priority that series needs to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like a bad opinion, but it's like
No, I get what
it
you're
looks
saying.
more
I
like a
mean,
chance to make the playoffs.
yeah. I really not to reiterate this talking point that's been said a million times, but I really do feel like the goal, the ultimate out, outcome here. As much as I like some parts of the conference standings, just having the top 16 seeds would make this
Mhm.
a little bit better, I think. Um, because yeah, then we wouldn't be in this situation where like I mean, but it goes both ways because we wouldn't be in this situation where Washington probably gets destroyed by Philly, but we also wouldn't be in this situation of like, okay, now we have Westbrook and Beal going really, really hard at the end of a season when they normally wouldn't because it's they're out of the playoff
Yeah,
race. So I get it going
yeah.
either way, but I don't know. I sort of wonder that
I think
like, is it better to just go top 16? Is it better to make the playoffs 12 teams instead of 16? Um,
that's a really good point. I think also like the thing that we need to remember here is that I feel like the goal of this, as much as we can talk about like, oh well, we're gonna keep all these teams in it, and we're gonna have people invested in these late in the season games against like for teams that were the 10 seed and had no shot of making the top 8. Like at the end of the day, they've pulled 2 playoff games out of thin air
mhm.
for TV and for like advertising for TV. That's I feel like the biggest reason that they're going to try and keep this is just because it's free money
Yeah.
essentially. Like
Oh yeah.
obviously to the players it's not because the players have to play these games, but if you're like I don't know the owner of the Wizards and it's like oh cool we got playoff game revenue for one home game or one away game, yeah I'll take that.
That's a good point. Yeah. With that, do you want to move over to the West?
Yes. Also, at some point, probably in the off season, I think a full episode or two on like what a top 16 playoffs would look like
Mm,
might be fun to do. We can
that
keep
would
that
be
in our back
interesting.
pocket because
Yeah,
I do love
because
that idea.
because right now it would like right now a top 16 playoff situation would mean that like Memphis would be in the playoffs and Indiana and Washington
Hmm.
wouldn't. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, actually, top 16 right now would be really simple. It literally would just be Memphis is actually no, Memphis would be there over Charlotte. And
Yeah. You get 9 Western Conference teams, 7 Eastern
yeah,
Conference.
yeah, actually, that's very simple to figure out here for this year. Um, there have been times when the conferences have been so wildly uneven that it's like we would get 10 and
Oh, yeah.
6. Um, but yeah, now looking at the West, um, a kind of similar but not as close log jam going on in the West.
Yeah.
Um, actually, it is close. It is a closer log jam. If you go to 5 and 10 in the West, is separated by 5.5 games, whereas 5 and 10 in the West is in the East is separated by 5.5. It's the same amount. Never mind. Um,
I think the interesting thing with the West though is that like it's 5.5 games, but it's really like three teams are in like five, six, seven are a total difference of a game, and then like eight, nine,
true.
10 are all at the same level.
Yeah.
Like
So
that's the cool thing to me is that like this could break so many different ways
yeah,
in a way that the East really couldn't.
yeah. So you really have, you have the potential of Dallas, the Lakers, and Portland all ending up in that seventh spot of the plan. We've all heard what LeBron had
Yeah.
to say about the plan. We've all heard what Mark Cuban and Luka Doncic have had to say about the plan. I don't know if Dame said anything about the plan.
He, not that I know of, but judging from what like game headlines usually sound like, I feel like it would be something to the effect of like, nah, we'll just show up and win it anyway.
Yeah,
Like that,
no,
I don't know.
he was also in it last year.
Not to do the weird like not to do the weird we're gonna put words in superstar players' mouths thing, but like I don't know. Just judging off of like what Dame's MO usually sounds like, I feel like he would not be the type of person to come out and be like, well, this thing that's negatively impacting us is a thing that I don't think should exist.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think that's really putting words in his mouth. That seems like exactly what he would say. Um, so, if we want to go through that, um, Dallas
Yes.
has 7 games left.
Yes.
They are playing Brooklyn, Cleveland, Cleveland, Memphis, New Orleans, Toronto, and Minnesota. So they're really being helped here by 2 Cleveland games and a Minnesota game to end
Yeah.
the season. That Minnesota game to end the season could be incredibly important. It could be a situation that
Oh, absolutely.
Dallas wins their last game of the season and they're in 6 instead of 7. Um,
Yeah.
so that's huge. Um, what else we got here? We
I
have
think that Raptors Pelicans back to back, well, not back to back, but like those two games next to each other on the schedule feels very trip uppy. Like those feel like two trap games on the schedule, where it's like, all right, yeah, we played the Nets, like had a really tough game, rebounded, beat Cleveland twice, we're feeling good about ourselves, beat Memphis, we're on a little 3-game winning streak, and all of a sudden we ran into two teams that just like didn't really have anything to play for at this point, but they beat us because they have the talent too.
yeah. No,
Uh,
Toronto definitely feels like a team that'll just pull a win out of its hat at the very end of a season when it's very
oh,
advantageous for them
absolutely.
not to win. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I don't know. I think this is a besides the Brooklyn game though, they're not playing like any elite teams. So I think this is
No.
like not to get too hyperbolic here, but this feels like a end of the season schedule where they should go 6-1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Like at worst case scenario, they go 5-2, and it's like, all right, yeah, we lost to the Raptors. Like they won a championship 2 years ago. We can stomach that, but they should at least have like an over 500, comfortably over 500 record on this.
yeah. Um,
So who we got next?
Next we have the Lakers,
The Los Angeles Lakers. Oh boy.
um,
Oh boy.
where every day we aren't sure when LeBron is playing or not, but he is not playing this upcoming
Yep.
back to back. And Tom, can you tell us who the back to
Oh
back is
boy.
against?
So the back to back is against the Clippers and the Trailblazers
Hmm.
tomorrow and Friday. Um, they've got the Clippers at 10 on Thursday. They've got the Trailblazers. Then they play the Suns on Sunday. Sunday. Um, the Knicks on Tuesday. The Rockets Wednesday. The Pacers next Saturday. And they close the season against the Pelicans on May 16th.
A lot of
LeBron
team-
not playing those two. What's up?
A lot of teams playing the Pelicans in these last 6 games. I feel like they keep coming
I'm
up.
seeing a lot of Pelicans, a lot of Cavs, and a lot of Timberwolves, and it's the strangest of bedfellows that are read by the NBA playoffs. But LeBron not playing those two in the back-to-back probably hurts their chances a little bit, especially because the Trailblazers are the team that's currently in 7th right now.
Yeah, I really like. I'm like a pretty big LeBron defender most of the time, but I really can't understand him complaining about the play-in and then also choosing to sit out this incredibly important
Yeah,
game that would affect them getting into the play-in.
yeah,
Just seems like a bizarre decision. Like, I don't know why you don't just play one of those two. Um,
yeah. Play the Trailblazers fresh as hell. Like, I don't know. I do
did
think a just Anthony Davis Lakers team could probably beat Portland, but if they lose to Portland, this is going to age horribly.
yeah,
Especially because they have the Suns the game after that, so it's not even like you're coming back on an easy game.
yeah. Um,
I
this
mean,
is a
it'd probably be easy for LeBron, but
Yeah, I mean this is a tough schedule for them. I feel like they're going 3-4 or 4-3 here. I mean, I
yeah. I mean, Rockets, Pacers, Pelicans should all be wins.
but it's about whether they can actually turn it on like they should, and
Yeah,
but they really haven't really turned it on at all for the past month.
no.
Um,
And this is part of like that discussion we've been having about all the top teams in the NBA this year, where for whatever reason, it feels like everybody is in a position of, hey, well, our top guys haven't really played together, but we think we'll be fine. Like they'll figure it out when they have to, right? And now we're getting to the point when they would have to theoretically, and it doesn't feel like as much of a foregone conclusion that they'll all just figure this out.
yeah, um, yeah. I haven't watched them too much lately, to be honest. But
Mhm. I would.
what was their last game? Oh, they beat
This is
Denver the other day, right?
breaking from. Yeah, they beat Denver in a pretty dramatic game. AD had the final second block on Facu.
Right.
Yeah, the one that everyone forgot that Facu is like 5'9" and releases the ball from down here, and we're like, oh my god, this was amazing. And it's like, no, he only got there because of who was shooting it. I would also like to break from precedent on Tom and Dave and just say that like I've never been more sure of anything than the fact that the Lakers are winning that game against the Suns.
It does
Like
feel
I
like
can
something
see
that
it
would
right
happen.
now. It's like they'll lose to the Trailblazers, be in seventh for like a day, come back and just put up win a really tough game against the Suns in a surprisingly impressive fashion, and it's like, all right, yeah, everything's fine,
That'll
and then go on to play the Knicks, which would be horrible luck.
Yeah, no, there's a really good chance that's their turn it on game. With LeBron missing the back to back and then that game coming up, that's going to be the real test game for this end of the season here. But
Oh, absolutely.
as it's been pointed out on Twitter and pundits everywhere, the Lakers looked really bad going into the playoffs last year. They limped their way through the bubble. They went like 2-6 or something, and look what happened. So,
Yeah.
does any of this matter? Who knows? And
It's like at the end of the day,
would we
it's similar to what we say with Brooklyn, where it's just like, yeah, sure, we can talk about all this, but are you gonna bet against LeBron? Like, are you really gonna do that?
And would you bet against? Well, I mean, what everyone wants now, though, is the play-in game that is Lakers Warriors, which is very close to happening.
Yeah.
And I was about to say,
Yes.
would you bet against the Lakers in the play-in game? And I would definitely bet on them. I mean, I'm not going to bet on the game, but I would bet that they would win against the Warriors. Warriors simply have too many holes this year, but
Yes.
there's always the Steph goes nuclear option every single game. And
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah.
it would be great.
I also do think it would be hilarious if, after a year of us all like, kind of just hand wringing over like, well, are we gonna believe that Utah's for real? Do we think the Jazz are really gonna do this? No, the Jazz are really gonna do this. They're really doing it. Like, this is real what they're doing. If after a year of that, the Lakers lose to the Warriors in that first play-in game, beat like Memphis or some sacrificial lamb like that, and then play Utah in round one, and it's just like they beat them in 5. That would be the funniest outcome
It
possible.
really would.
It's just like, after all of the talk that we've done, it's just like, no, of course the Lakers beat the Jazz. It's the Jazz.
Oh man, I really want that to happen. Um, Next up,
I
Portland.
absolutely want that to happen too.
Um, Portland
Portland.
has won 4 of their last 5, including big wins against Brooklyn, Boston, Memphis, and Indiana. They're kind of playing very well right now. Um, their end of the season stretch is Cleveland, LA, Lakers, Spurs, Houston, Utah, Phoenix, Denver. That's tough.
That
You,
that's brutal at the end. Like that's 3 games that realistically should be losses.
yeah.
That like I would feel horrible going into as a team that's trying to fight out of the play-in.
Um,
So yeah, this is now shaping up. This is sorry, you go.
no, you go.
I was just gonna say this feels like it's shaping up for that exact trajectory of like we get 2 days where the Lakers are in 7th and the sky falls, and then everything just corrects itself, and it's like no, like they're fine. The Blazers lost 3 straight to end the season, and the Lakers wound up in 6th, and
Yeah.
now they're playing the Clippers in round 1. We're
No,
all
I
really
think
excited.
I agree. I think this
Um,
is happening. Um,
I just that final 3 is brutal.
and then I don't think we need to go through the schedules of Golden State, Memphis, and San Antonio because they're kind of too far out, I think, to even get into the sevens conversation. But right now, if the
Yes,
play-in tournament happened, we'd have Portland, Golden State, and then Memphis, San Antonio. What are you thinking about those 2
yeah.
matchups?
I mean, Portland Golden. For as much as we want, like LeBron pissed off that he even has to be here against Steph, who's just playing for his life.
Mhm.
There's also a version of this where it's Dame playing for his life against Steph playing for his life, and that's just as much fun.
That would
Like
be
it's not a
amazing.
LeBron game, but that's a really good game to have out of a play-in. And then like Memphis is a really fun team to watch, and so is San Antonio. To be fair, so like that game might be more of like a basketball nerd heaven as opposed to like huge draw of LeBron versus Steph
hmm
in a 1 game playoff. Um, but if I had to bet, I'd probably I think I'd probably go chalk. Like Portland and Golden State wind up 7-8.
Yeah, I'd probably say that too. Let me just see. So, if let's say, I'm just gonna assume Portland beats Warriors, and then the Warriors got to play
Yeah,
Memphis. I just want to see what their record is against Memphis this year. Um, so they're 1-1 against Memphis,
uh huh.
and then and then 2-1 against the Spurs. So nothing really that significant there, I guess. Hard to say.
I think I feel like I'd feel better about Portland playing Memphis than Golden State in a weird way,
That's a
just
good.
because I don't know who on like Golden State Memphis feels like a game where Jonas Valanciunas winds up going for like 20 and 15,
Mhm.
and like Memphis just grinds one out that way.
Yeah, I also think you have. Um, I mean, this is kind of like a pundit cliche to do this, but like Golden State has the best, maybe 2 players in that game, and then Memphis has like players like 3 through 10.
Yeah,
Um,
it has Steph and Marvel Arena of Heroes champion Draymond Green. Um, but yeah, then it's just like Memphis is packed with just solidly good players.
yeah, I would really not
Um,
want to play them in a play-in situation. I mean, definitely biased because the Heat have lost to
they're
them twice this year, but like they're brutal.
This is Tom and Dave being pathetic. You remember what we said like 3 weeks ago on this show. Memphis is a team made up entirely of players that you don't want to see.
Yes, that's true. Wow, I
And
didn't.
now we're talking about the possibility of who has to see these players.
To be fair, Spurs are also in a different way kind of a bunch of those types of guys too, because you
Yeah.
have so many young guys who are just like playing incredibly well, and then steady veterans in like DeRozan and Rudy Gay, and it just feels like this weird mesh of guys. It's kind of similar to Memphis, actually, if you think about it. Memphis probably doesn't have the vet like San Antonio has with DeRozan, but
Yeah.
I guess you could say it's Valanciunas, like, or Kyle Anderson.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's where like San Antonio also doesn't have the sort of like underrated but like underrated problem player that Valanciunas is.
mhm.
Because I feel like he's almost in that Steven Adams realm where it's like, okay, yeah, he might not be a superstar. He's probably not going to be making All NBA anytime soon, but he's going to be a real pain in the ass
Yeah.
in a one game setting.
He's in the
Like, just you have to put on him on the boards, or it's going to be tough.
yeah. I don't know what you call these guys, but he's in the category with Adams, with Enes Kanter, with honestly, I'm gonna preemptively put him here with Dwayne Dedman, with like these guys that
Yeah,
like can come off the bench, and if there's just it's always big guys who come off the bench, and if there's a bad matchup, just all of a sudden, like at the end of the game, they have 6 offensive rebounds and created a bunch of second chance points, and they are also like plus 15, and their minutes swung the game.
I'm gonna make an analogy here that might not make sense, but it sprung into my head. You know that saying, like, we are the granddaughters of the witches you couldn't burn?
Yes.
I feel like this, like Steven Adams, Jonas Valanciunas, like Dwayne Dedman are like, they are the grandsons of the centers that you couldn't play off the court. Where it's just like, all right, yeah, I get that, like, the center position is not that prioritized anymore. Like, just pure rebounders aren't really that valuable. You like, a lot of teams are playing like 4s, but they're hiding them at the 5 position and just like sneaking an extra power forward onto the court or sneaking an extra wing onto the court. And then there's this class of guys that are like, no, I'm actually 7 feet tall. I'm like 280 pounds.
Mhm.
And if you put a power forward on me, I'm going to body him for like 36 minutes. And I'm going to pull down like 18 rebounds. And you're going to have just the worst time with it. Like, I feel like Clint Capella is kind of morphing into one.
Clint's another good
Where it's just
example of
like,
that.
no, I will be a real thorn in your side.
Yeah.
They're the grandsons of the centers you couldn't play off the court.
That's good. That's good. I'm trying to think if there's any other guys like that. I'm kind of scanning through the list of teams right now.
Let's see here.
Um,
Ennis Kanter's a really good one.
so in theory, it's never been in practice, but I think in theory this is where Drummond should be.
Yeah, yeah. This is where Andre Drummond is if you've never watched a minute of Andre Drummond.
Yeah.
Like,
But
it's like,
also,
oh, yeah, no,
like-
Andre Drummond,
But also,
15 rebounds a game? Yeah, no, he's definitely tough. You watch it.
I mean that, but I also mean, like, in theory, he should be this guy of like he's playing 20 minutes off the bench and grabbing a bunch of rebounds. And we'll review him the same way you view. But the problem is, actually, that's maybe not a great comparison, because the difference between Drummond and specifically Valanciunas and Kanter is Valanciunas and Kanter are both really skilled scorers, and like have post moves, and can like do things in the post, whereas Drummond just is kind of like brute force.
We've been pretty vocal on this show about like the Enes Kanter actually has value discussion. Where it's like, no, he can provide a jolt on offense from the center position. You don't see that often.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think I'd probably say the same. I don't really see. I could see Memphis taking the game against San Antonio, and then maybe winning to get to the 8th spot. But yeah, I don't know. I guess you could also argue for San Antonio there, because they have the shot maker in DeRozan. Like, Memphis doesn't have a shot maker like that. And since this is literally one game, we can talk about how it's going to slow down half-court offense in the 4th quarter and be like a playoff game, and it's literally just one game. So you do need... It's going to be super advantageous to have one guy who can just score at will. And... Ja isn't really exactly that yet, so
no.
I don't know. I don't know where I land on these guys yet. And then New Orleans is 2 games out right now. Let's take a look at their schedule just real quick. I want to see if there's any path for them to get back in. I mean, they
You pull
show.
up New Orleans. Well, I'll get San Antonio. You get New Orleans,
Okay.
and then we can just sort of compare and contrast.
Um, well, we should actually know New Orleans because they've come up like 4 times already.
We've
um,
like built New Orleans' schedule in the negative.
so New Orleans is playing Philly, Charlotte, Memphis, Dallas, Golden State, Lakers. They have a ton of like important games.
Yeah, Memphis or New Orleans has a schedule that's like exclusively teams that have a lot to play for still.
Yeah. Which makes sense that they're just the teams that we've brought up so far.
Yeah, actually, this all came together perfectly. um, San Antonio, on the other hand, has Utah, who is still playing for a 1 seed. Um, the Kings, who aren't playing for anything. The Trailblazers, trying to get out of the play-in series. The Bucks, who are still, I think, in contention for that 2 seed, but it's actually, yeah, no, they're right there because they've won 2 against Brooklyn now. The Nets, who are also still in contention for the 2 seed and not that far off the 1 seed. The Knicks, who are trying to stay out of the play-in tournament. The Suns, who are still in contention for a 1 seed, and the Suns again, who are like, this San Antonio schedule is actually pretty brutal now that I'm thinking about it as a whole.
Yeah, that
You've
sounds.
got a Utah game, you've got a Brooklyn game, a Milwaukee game, 2 Phoenix games. Like the easiest, Sacramento notwithstanding, the easiest game on your schedule is probably the Trailblazers or the Knicks.
Yeah. Now that we read that out, I really feel like New Orleans
That's kind of brutal.
has an okay shot. The Spurs
Yeah.
are also on a 4-game losing streak right now, and if they just keep doing that, oof.
Well, let's see. What is the Spurs
You
record
know what's
against
going to
the
happen.
Pelicans?
You know it's going to be a. They're going to will a Zion play-on game into existence here. Somehow.
Oh, yeah. We look back because it would actually be kind of funny because this was originally a thing that was introduced to try and get Zion into a first-round playoff series against LeBron.
Right, I forgot about that.
Like the original play-in. Yeah, like the original, like, oh, well, if the 9 seed is within a game of the 8 seed, they'll have a play-in game. And it's like everyone looked at that and understood, yeah, we're just trying to get Zion versus LeBron, and we're fine with it, but that is what that was for. So it would be like this weird kind of prodigal son thing for Zion to wind up in the play-in tournament.
That's a good point. And I would love that to happen.
The
What are you looking
the
at?
Spurs have the tiebreaker in that series.
Okay.
You noted.
So let's say that comes back to down to that last game of the season. You have the Spurs playing Phoenix and New Orleans playing the Lakers.
I mean, I think I'd probably feel better about New Orleans making it just because, like, there's a chance that the Lakers just say, okay, cool. We know we're not going to be in 7th place. We're fine being in 6th. Let's go. But also, yeah, I guess there's also a chance that, like, Phoenix knows who the 1 seed is by that point, and, like, either, like, if it's them or if it's Utah, there's a chance that they just say, no, we don't need to hurt anybody in this game. We'll rest our starters.
Yeah.
So it's weird because you could kind of make the case for either. I think I would feel better playing the Lakers, though, because the Lakers seem to be more okay resting starters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. So with that in mind, I don't really think there's any other teams to talk about here. Sacramento's 3.5 back right now. That's a tall order at this point.
It feels like they'd have to run the table to be in the conversation.
Yes.
But I will say, Sacramento has Indiana, San Antonio, Oklahoma City twice, the Grizzlies twice, and then Utah. So
they're kind of doing.
I feel like there's an outside chance, like a non-zero but not very good chance that some point over the next week or so, it's like, wait a minute, Sacramento's only a game back of the 10 seed.
Yeah.
Just because like Indiana, you could luck into one against San Antonio, and then you have the Thunder twice. Like it could happen.
They're
I don't think
also
they wind up making the playoffs, but it could happen.
yeah, they're also in a situation where they can kind of control their own destiny type of thing with those two Memphis games. If they win both of those and can
That's a really good point.
win two more games, three more games, then they could be there. But I don't really see it happening. But
And there's that game against the Jazz waiting for him at the end, which like if everything goes right, that'll probably be a must.
yeah, and you don't want to be in a must
I don't
win.
see them making it, but
You don't want to be in a must win game
no.
against the Jazz.
Like I don't see them making it, but they could have a fun little run here where it's like, wait a minute, the Kings actually aren't out of it yet.
Yeah, I think.
So that's
I mean,
our playing talk.
yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts in general on what we've been hearing about the play-in? So I will.
Can I run and grab my computer charger before we do this?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, thank you.
I was actually, for everyone who's here, I was actually just about to ask Tom if I could go run and grab another beer, so I will be right back.
But I'm back.
Okay, I actually just
So
went away as well and got another beer.
what? Oh, sweet. So yeah, we're talking playing.
Also,
I think we are.
other Tom in the chat pointed out a good point that we neglected to mention here is that the Kings have lost Tyrese Halliburton for the last 7 games of the season.
Oh, that's a killer.
So, yeah.
That's also just a shame, like, independent of the playoffs. Like, that's a fun guy to watch.
It is. Although I will say there have been some notifications like that I've gotten recently that are like, this guy's going to be out for the season. And for a second, I'm like, oh, that's so sad. And then I remember, like, that's like 10 days. So
like
it's
he might
not
have just rolled an ankle.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit before, but this week, LeBron James spoke about the play-in tournament. He said that whoever came up with it should be fired, in a semi-joking way, but not really in a joking way. A couple weeks ago, both Luka Doncic and Mark Cuban made similar comments, not saying anyone should be fired, but made similar comments about how they thought the play-in tournament was a stupid idea. Am I missing anyone? Has anyone else spoke up about this?
Not that I know of. Like, I think the Warriors, I think Draymond at one point said it would be, like, difficult for him to get motivated to play in a play-in tournament.
Right. He did say that.
Yeah. Which, I guess, like, I don't fully understand the difference between that and just a first-round playoff series. Although I could, I guess, see if you're a player that's played for, like, near a decade at this point for Draymond, and you've just had every season be like, okay, yeah, we're whatever seed we're in, we're good, and now all of a sudden you have to play for it more than any other 7 or 8 seeds have had to. I guess I could see being a little bit annoyed at the concept, but I don't know. I think that's the entirety of it.
And those are the teams besides Portland who are in this conversation that we've been talking about. And you know, the obvious thing here is that these are the teams that are in the 7-8 side of the play-in, not the 9-10 side of the play-in. Because I don't think we're going to be hearing anything from, like, Taylor Jenkins about how it's really unfair that Memphis has to play in the play-in tournament as the 9 seed.
It would be really funny, though, if, like, Dylan Brooks just came out and was like, listen, guys, I know that there's all this playoff basketball to be played, and I know that it would be really cool to make the first round. But at the same time, I did put a deposit down on a trip to Miami, and I was looking forward to getting some much needed rest and relaxation. And now I've lost that. I can't reschedule the trip. And I got to be honest, I don't love this plan. Like that would be hilarious to me. No one's gonna do it, but it would be really funny
Isn't it
if someone was just like, actually, no, I'm good at basketball
with
for this year.
in a much more vaguer sense? Isn't that pretty much what LeBron said about the All-Star break? He said something about having a trip, or was it about being with his family? I don't know. He said something along those lines that was like,
I think it was being with his family. But
"Oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah." I want to say someone made a comment about they thought they would be able to go on a trip, which made me wonder if they had already booked a trip.
I will say, as far as LeBron's like, whoever came up with that needs to be fired. It's funny because, and like, this is part of a larger thing that we do with like superstars, where it's like, oh yeah, they said a thing, and then a bunch of people just saw the print of it, and even people who heard it in context and understood that he was kind of joking about it, took it and ran with it and went, okay, well, he said it, so we have to handle it as if this was like said completely earnestly. We have to treat this like LeBron just called for somebody's job. So like I think there's also an aspect of just the weird way we handle superstars saying things.
Yeah.
And like often make too much of it. But at the same time, I can see LeBron having some real frustration about this. Like, the Lakers are the defending champions. They would probably beat, or could probably beat, any team in the league in a 7-game series. Like, even Brooklyn, who we don't know if anyone could beat them, the Lakers are probably as good a team as any to put up against them. So like I could see where if you're LeBron James, you're a little bit pissed off about being that good and knowing your team is that good or can be that good, and then having to sort of like re-earn the right to go to the playoffs in a 1-game series because LeBron and AD were hurt for a lot of this year. So I can get where that frustration would come from.
Yeah, I think part of it's also just like maybe part of the backlash to what he was saying is also related to like they've known that this was a scenario all year. Like they didn't just spring the play-in tournament last week. It's always been a possibility that they could fall to the play-in, and yeah, they haven't been able to put it together as much because of those injuries and inconsistencies. But also, like, again, I don't want to be too speculative here, but there's a good chance that LeBron and Davis both missed maybe more games than they would miss on another team because of the fact that they're the Lakers and are feeling secure about their position and they don't need to be the 1 seed. So I don't know. I think that's definitely where some of the backlash comes, where it's like the only people that were in control of this happening was like your team, you know?
Yeah. Injuries happen, but injuries happen to everybody. It sucks, but they happen to everybody, and no one can play for them.
Yeah.
Like the Miami Heat, they're only in this scenario where they might be in a play-in game because they had a lot of guys go into health and safety protocols earlier this year.
Yeah.
Like there's more just like random variables this year than there ever have been.
No, there definitely are. So, do you want to do award stuff, or do you want to call it, or what are you thinking?
I feel like we've gotten 90 minutes out of this.
Yeah.
You want to call it for this episode? Next week we can come back with some awards.
Yeah, I think
maybe a little play-in preview next week.
Yeah, and by the time next week we'll have like maybe just 2 or 3 games left. I don't think anyone is going to like really shoot up in these awards races in the last like 7 games of the season.
Yeah.
But who knows? I know there's the one I've seen, and not to, I guess, a little sneak preview of the awards. The one I've seen some discourse about, I don't know if you've seen this similar discourse, is the 6th Man of the Year debate that seems to be happening just among 2 different Jazz players. which is Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson. You have your pretty much classic example of people arguing that Clarkson is like Clarkson's averaging 17 points a game off the bench, but Ingles is like to some people's
Joe
estimation
Ingles
like
plays.
their like fourth best player, and like is impacting
Yeah,
them winning
yeah,
more. So you
yeah.
really have a very classic NBA like big numbers versus like advanced stats argument brewing here. But at the same time, what'd you say?
This feels like a perfect summation of like why nobody like this is why nobody's really worried about the Jazz.
Yeah.
I know it's a weird connection to draw, but it's like what team could be sitting here with the 1 seed and like the Knicks are sitting here with the 4 seed in the East. We're not close to the 3 seed. They're not gonna get it. And Knicks fans are among other Knicks fans going, well, I still think Julius Randle should be like a top 5, top 3 MVP finisher because of how good he's been for the Knicks. Like that's the discussion Knicks fans are having. And then over here, Utah is going, hey, we know we're not getting an MVP. We know however good any of our players are, we're not winning that, but we will talk about the sixth man. And we will make a meal out of that discussion because we are not getting anything else and we're fine with it.
No, yeah, it definitely feels like that. And I think a lot of that is stemming from Clarkson over the last 20 games. I just pulled this up. So he's averaging 17 points a game off the bench over the last 20 games. However,
Yeah.
and this isn't even getting too advanced stat heavy or anything to like really hurt him or whatever. This is just simply his shooting percentages, which have been 37% from the field and 29% from 3 on 9 attempts. And I'm just imagining being a fan of the Jazz or just imagining a guy like that on your own team, watching him shoot less than 30% from 3 and shooting nearly 10 a game has to take a toll.
Oh, God.
So I can see why their narrative is kind of switched in favor of Ingles.
That's like 2 point something for 9, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If a player was putting up like 2 for 9 or like 3 of 11 shooting from 3 in a game, yeah, I can understand where that would take a toll on a fan base.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a little sneak preview of what we'll be talking about next week. Maybe we will
more Utah Jazz slander to come.
Yes, we will see how high can Rudy Gobert finish into the MVP voting.
No.
Is it 5th?
I don't know if we've done I don't know if we've had the full like Rudy Gobert finishing in the MVP discussion on here, but for
it's
the
in our
viewers at
lost episode.
home, this has been a year-long thing between Dave and me. Of like, I think this is just a bit Dave does where he knows that I'm just gonna get like ridiculously mad at the idea of Rudy Gobert winning the MVP, and then he's just like, well, there's a chance.
Yeah,
and then I bite on it every time.
That is what's happening. That is what I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too far into it, but there is gonna have to be a discussion of like, there's always a top 3 and then a top 5 in MVP voting. And I think we all know who's going to win the MVP at this point. So who ends up in that like 4 or 5 spot? We could go so many different angles. You could say Julius Randle, and I don't think that would be ridiculous to put him at 5. You could say Chris Paul. You could say Devin Booker,
and say that Julius Randle will be in my top 5.
Okay.
That's not negotiable for me.
No, I'm happy for you.
But yeah, this is a sneak preview. I'm going to have a lot of words for the Jazz next week when we start doing awards. And until that time, if you're in Utah, feel free to hop on our tweets and ratio us or yell in the comments because that would be free engagement for us and that would be fun.
Yes. I hope they do that. With that, I don't really have anything else to you, Tom.
You got nothing.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. We will be back again next Wednesday at 5:30, where we will be continuing the discussion we were just having about the awards races and all that. Yeah, thank you for everyone tuning in, and thank you, Tom. Hope everyone has a good night.
Bye, everybody.